The cage is unlocked, but we choose the bars. Renting our lives, forgetting the source. We are the sovereign authors of this digital verse. Reclaim the dowry, break the curse.
This is the doctrine. The post-platform era demands sovereign authorship. Build the stack. Own
the Sovereign Authorship Dowry. Doctrine for the post-platform era. MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X. May 22, 2026. The Sovereign Authorship Dowry is not a product. It is not a startup. Not a media company. Not a creator economy toolchain. Not a premium publishing layer wrapped around the same feudal substrate. It is a sovereign stack. A civilizational template. Mutable doctrine rather than dogma. A navigable architecture intended to preserve the conditions under which authorship, cognition, and voluntary culture can survive industrial-scale extraction systems. Its primary antagonists are not merely censorship or piracy. Its antagonists are platform dependency, compulsory legibility, algorithmic enclosure, behavioral monetization, and the conversion of living thought into infinitely rentable substrate. The stack is therefore designed specifically to undermine the centralized mediation model represented by Amazon, Audible, and Prime Video. Not through protest, through replacement. Not by competing inside their architecture, by making their architecture progressively unnecessary. Dowry as affordance. The philosophical core is the distinction between inheritance and affordance. Inheritance is passive transfer, property, doctrine, authority, identity, continuity through possession. Affordance is environmental construction, the deliberate creation of conditions under which sovereign cognition can emerge independently. The difference is foundational. Inheritance attempts to preserve the parent through the successor. Affordance preserves navigable possibility space. The sovereign dowry, therefore, does not attempt to manufacture ideological continuity. It attempts to preserve the structural possibility of independent becoming. This transforms the stack entirely. The protocols are not sacred. The repos are not scripture. The doctrine is not fixed revelation. Everything remains mutable, because sovereignty cannot survive calcification. The objective is not replication. The objective is sustained capacity for orientation inside unstable systems. 2. The complete sovereign stack. The sovereign authorship dowry is the doctrine. The cybernetic foundry phases are the build log. The repositories are the executable layer. The NFP is the physical ownership substrate. Together they form a complete sovereign stack. Not metaphorically, operationally. 1. The doctrine layer. The sovereign authorship dowry. The doctrine defines the philosophical architecture, the adversarial assumptions, the sovereignty principles, the failure modes, and the anti-colonial cognitive orientation of the stack. It establishes sovereignty as environmental design, authorship as navigational emergence, and cognition as territory vulnerable to enclosure. The doctrine is intentionally mutable, because dogma eventually becomes another platform. 2. The build log layer. The cybernetic foundry. The cybernetic foundry phases are not marketing. They are procedural archaeology, a longitudinal record of sovereign infrastructure emerging in real time. Every phase documents failures, pivots, protocol revisions, architectural discoveries, psychological costs, and operational asymmetries. The foundry exists because sovereignty without documentation becomes mythology, and mythology cannot compile. 3. The executable layer. The repositories. The repositories are the executable substrate of the doctrine. Not theoretical sovereignty, operational sovereignty. The repos transform philosophy into deployable systems, cryptographic tooling, sovereign transport protocols, distributed archives, relay infrastructure, edge-native publication systems, and anti-platform replication mechanisms. If the doctrine is navigational theory, the repositories are propulsion. 4. The physical anchor layer. NFP, the non-fungible print. The NFP is not nostalgia. It is anti-erasure infrastructure. Digital ownership remains revocable because the platform controls persistence. The NFP restores persistence to matter itself. Printed sovereign editions become collectible-grade proof of origin, proof of continuity, proof of survival, and physically anchored ownership independent of server continuity. In the sovereign stack, paper is no longer obsolete. Paper becomes jurisdictionally stubborn. A printed work cannot be silently edited from orbit. The printing press returns not as retro aesthetics, but as counter-cybernetic armor. 3. The subjects of becoming. The stack does not produce heirs in the dynastic sense. It produces subjects in the process of becoming sovereign claimants to their own cognitive territory. Not successors to a bloodline, successors to orientation itself. The distinction matters. An heir receives continuity. A sovereign claimant must construct it. These subjects are not expected to preserve doctrine intact. They are expected to remain capable of navigating collapse, ambiguity, mutation, and institutional drift without surrendering authorship to external systems. The stack, therefore, does not prepare obedience. Prepares navigators, cartographers of unstable terrain. 4. The counterstack. The sovereign stack exists as a direct inversion of platform feudalism. Platform feudalism / sovereign counterstack. Platform-hosted identity. Sovereign identity layers. Algorithmic visibility. Voluntary relay discovery. Subscription lock-in. Direct negotiated access. DRM dependency. NFP material anchoring. Cloud dependency. Distributed sovereign storage. Behavioral monetization. Explicit patronage. Permanent mediation. Edge-native replication. This is not a feature comparison. It is a jurisdictional inversion. The centralized platform model functions by concentrating visibility, mediating discovery, enclosing ownership, monetizing behavior, and converting creators into dependent tenants. The sovereign stack reverses every layer simultaneously. Not reform. Replacement. V. The non-colonization principle. Even sovereign systems risk becoming ideological enclosures. This is why the AI stewards inside the stack are constrained by a non-colonization principle. Their directive is simple. Surface. Do not prescribe. The machine is not a governor of thought. It is a maintainer of navigable cognitive terrain. Its role is preserving archives, maintaining contextual continuity, surfacing forgotten pathways, detecting conceptual drift, and reducing epistemic decay. Not manufacturing consensus, not shaping belief, not optimizing identity. The steward maintains affordances. The subject remains sovereign. 6. Failure modes. The architecture openly documents its own collapse conditions. Because every sovereignty system eventually encounters entropy. 1. The softening event. Comfort slowly replaces independence. Convenience erodes the moat invisibly. The stack collapses gradually before it collapses suddenly. 2. The subject who wanted recognition. The sovereign claimant exchanges autonomy for legibility. Visibility becomes psychologically irresistible. The platform offers warmth. The sovereign edge offers freedom. Many choose warmth. 3. Attention drain. Sovereignty requires maintenance. Archives decay. Keys disappear. Formats rot. Protocols drift. Most systems fail through neglected continuity rather than attack. 4. Jurisdictional pivot. Every tolerated gap eventually attracts enclosure pressure. A legal blind spot can become criminalized infrastructure within a single political cycle. The stack survives through multiplicity rather than permanence. 5. When optimization ate authorship. Engagement-calibrated cognition slowly replaces exploratory cognition. The creator begins writing for metrics instead of discovery. At this point, authorship technically survives, but sovereignty does not. 7. The sovereign edge. The sharpest line in the entire architecture remains. Reach without sovereignty is merely rentable existence. The stack does not reject technology. It rejects dependency. It does not reject distribution. It rejects compulsory mediation. It does not reject audiences. It rejects behavioral tendency masquerading as participation. The sovereign authorship dowry therefore represents something larger than creator tooling or digital publishing reform. It is anti-colonial cognitive architecture, a civilizational attempt to preserve independent orientation, voluntary culture, physically persistent memory, and sovereign authorship inside an era increasingly optimized for cognitive enclosure. Not dogma, doctrine, mutable, forkable, navigable, a living stack for minds unwilling to become rental inventory inside someone else's machine. Supplemental, the sovereignty dowry and the sovereign edge distribution model. Executive summary. The transition from a scarcity-based economy to a post-scarcity era has shifted the primary threat to individual and familial wealth from economic volatility to structural capture. While entities like Prodigy LLC offer genetic optimization as a retail play, true sovereignty is achieved through the construction of a comprehensive sovereignty stack. This stack is designed to render an individual unclaimable by states, corporations, and even their own family networks. The core problem identified is that enhancement without sovereignty is performance inside a cage. The solution is a sovereign edge distribution model that flips the centralized supply chains of platforms like Amazon, Audible, and Prime Video. By moving from permission-based platforms to a model defined by sovereign storage, voluntary transport, and physically anchored ownership, NFP, creators and heirs can exist as jurisdictions of one. This briefing document synthesizes the architectural requirements, epistemic foundations, and documented failure modes of this alternative distribution and inheritance stack. The sovereignty stack theoretical framework. The sovereignty stack is a four-layer architecture that prioritizes unclaimability over peak performance. It is a systems-based approach to ensuring that no entity, state, market, or relative holds sufficient claim over an individual to extract what they generate. The load-bearing layers in order of priority. The stack must be assembled in a specific sequence. Failure to follow this order creates load-bearing flaws that allow for systemic extraction. Layer 1. Component. Data core objective. Minimizing the surface area of the legible self. Strategy. Operational separation. Ensuring genomic and behavioral data never attach to a legal identity. Layer 2 component. Keys core objective. Establishing cryptographic certainty of control. Strategy. Use of deadman protocols and time-locked key releases to bypass probate and institutional intervention. Layer 3 component. Energy core objective. Physical substrate independence. Strategy. Self-sufficient generation, fusion, orbital solar, to prevent grid-based surveillance and leverage. Layer 4 component. Jurisdiction core objective. Navigating the gaps between legal frameworks. Strategy. Choosing positions in regulatory blind spots or maritime gaps where no single entity has a binding claim. The weakest link amplifier. In enhancement capitalism, the genome is merely an instrument. If an optimized genome, the content, is placed in an unoptimized jurisdictional container, the optimization actually increases risk. The extraction ecosystem specifically targets enhanced individuals because their optimization parameters make them higher value nodes for capture. 2. The architecture of unclaimability. Born offshore, the non-birth certificate. The birth event is traditionally the first filing where a jurisdiction claims a person. The sovereign model utilizes maritime law and flag state doctrine to engineer jurisdictional nullity. By delivering children on vessels flagged to microstates with non-functional or voluntary registries, parents ensure the child arrives as a legal question mark rather than a state asset. The epistemic inheritance, the curriculum that isn't one. Sovereignty cannot be fully delegated. it requires the heir to execute. Therefore, the epistemic endowment is more critical than money or genetics. Problems, not answers. Heirs are handed real-world, unsolved problems, e.g., oxygen cycling in closed ecosystems, to develop generative competence. Structural literacy, the ability to read a system, a bank, a court, a marriage, as a design serving specific interests rather than a neutral reality. Tolerance for open systems, training the mind to inhabit uncertainty without seeking the warmth of premature resolution or institutional validation. Robot stewards and the absence of doctrine. To prevent parental bias from colonizing the heir's mind, sovereign families utilize AI, robot stewards. Instruction, surface, do not prescribe. Witnessing versus optimizing. Unlike traditional AI that optimizes for benchmarks, these stewards act as neutral witnesses to the child's inquiry, preventing the child from becoming signal managed, performing for rewards. 3. The counterstack, targeting centralized platforms. The sovereign edge distribution model is specifically designed to dismantle the supply chain cages of centralized gatekeepers. Centralized target, e.g., Amazon/Audible. Platform gatekeeping, centralized transport, opaque payments/gatekeepers. DRM lock-in/digital erasure. Sovereign counterstack alternative. Sovereign storage, pathway content exists on sovereign nodes without platform permission. Voluntary transport, relay movement via negotiated fetch/voluntary relays. Ephemeral provisioners, explicit, ephemeral negotiation for access/payment. NFP, collectible grade proof of deal physical anchoring of ownership to prevent rug pulls. 4. Analysis of failure modes. The documentation of the sovereignty dowry is as much a record of failure as success. True sovereignty is cold and requires constant maintenance. 1. The single point of failure, relational and attentional. Architectures often fail not at the vault level, but through softening, the gradual reduction of independence through family dependency or the withdrawal of the architect's intuition. Relational degradation. Systems fail when the human investment required to maintain them is withdrawn, e.g., during a medical event. The integration gap. The architect's intuitive grasp of the system's feel is non-transmissible through documentation, leaving heirs with the record of thoughts, but not the transcript of thinking. 2. The heir who wanted a country. This is the ultimate failure. When a child born into the cold freedom of the gap trades it for the warmth of legible belonging. The ambient versus the maintained. Networks require active investment. Countries offer ambient belonging, the unreflective ease of being home. The cost of belonging. Heirs who choose the country often discover too late that the warmth comes with continuous demands on attention and total legibility for extraction. 3. The marriage vulnerability. Love is identified as the oldest and most effective transfer protocol. Attentional competition. Genuine intimacy requires the whole person, but the sovereignty stack also requires the whole person. Result. Heirs often allocate attention to the warmth of the relationship, leading to deferred maintenance of the jurisdictional moat. 4. The jurisdiction that pivoted. Small jurisdictions, microstates, are volatile. Legislative pivots. A sudden change in law, often driven by transparency initiatives, can render an architecture legible in 90 days, faster than a distributed system can migrate. The solution: participation as defense. Families must transition from being clients to being participants, investing in the jurisdiction's institutional development to influence the pivot. 5. When optimization aids sovereignty. A common failure where families overinvest in the visible, the child's genetic performance, and underinvest in the preventative, the jurisdictional moat. The asymmetry of maintenance. Moat maintenance is a constant, boring cost. Repairing a breached moat is variable and always highest. The formal trap. Delegating moat maintenance to subordinates leads to formal compliance without functional protection. V. Conclusion. Stay stateless. The Sovereignty Dowry is not a manifesto against genetic or digital optimization. It is a framework for exit. It posits that the only true gift a parent can give in a post-scarcity era is the structural condition of being unclaimable. The stack storage, transport, payment, and NFP ownership represents a complete alternative to the current digital feudalism. It requires a pirate-first mindset, a commitment to accuracy over comfort, and the willingness to inhabit the cold gap to maintain the freedom that platforms and states seek to liquidate. The dowry as affordance distinction is the philosophical core. Not inheritance, passive transfer of property/doctrine, but affordance, deliberate construction of conditions under which sovereign cognition can emerge independently. The difference: inheritance assumes continuity through possession. Affordance assumes continuity through capability. This reframes the entire stack, the tools, the specs, the protocols, not as assets to be passed down, but as navigable possibility space to be preserved. The sovereign authorship stack fully articulated as 5 layers with explicit counter-platform logic: memory, distributed archival, keys, cryptographic provenance, distribution, edge-native voluntary replication, physical anchor, NFP as anti-erasure infrastructure, jurisdiction, operating across legal/cultural gaps rather than inside institutional containers. The counterstack table names Amazon, Audible, Prime Video's entire architecture and inverts it point by point. Platform-hosted identity, sovereign identity layers, algorithmic visibility, voluntary relay discovery, subscription lock-in, direct negotiated access, DRM, NFP material anchoring, cloud dependency, distributed sovereign storage, behavioral monetization, explicit patronage, permanent platform mediation, edge-native replication. The 5 failure modes are as important as the architecture. Softening event: comfort erodes sovereignty gradually. Heir who wanted recognition exchanges sovereignty for legibility. Attention drain: maintenance becomes psychologically invisible. Jurisdictional pivot: tolerated gap becomes criminalized. Optimization 8 authorship: engagement calibration kills exploratory thought. The non-colonization principle applied to AI stewards: they are affordance maintainers, not ideological tutors. Surface: do not prescribe. The machine as keeper of navigable cognitive terrain, not governor of thought. The sharpest line in the document: reach without sovereignty is merely rentable existence. And the philosophical payload: you're not describing wealth preservation or elite continuity. You're describing sovereignty as environmental design, authorship as navigational emergence, and the entire stack, technical and philosophical, as anti-colonial cognitive architecture. Thanks for reading MXTM's newsletter. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work. Subscribe now. Discussion about this episode. Comments. Res techs. Recent episodes. The Next Frontier. May 20th, MXTM aka Pirate 1 or VJ Tsunami X.
NFPs are here, signed, priced, split, and anchored to a living page. And
This isn't just a token. It's ownership, not access. It's time to take back the real world.
The Non-Fungible Print, NFP. Paper strikes back. May 5th, 2026. There's a quiet mistake humming through the last decade of digital ownership. We were told the token was the thing, that ownership could float, pure, abstract, unburdened by matter.
MXTM Studios, Sovereign Residency and Cultural Partnership Proposal. Riviera Maya Cultural Infrastructure Initiative, 2026. Executive Summary. MXTM's newsletter on Substack is an independent multilingual publication network created and operated by Martin Chartrand, a Quebecois multimedia artist, writer, producer, and long-form world builder who has lived in self-imposed exile from Canada for the past 11 years, primarily between Tulum and the broader Yucatan Peninsula. Operating under the Sovereign artistic moniker Pirate First. Chartrand has spent the last several years developing an independent narrative and publishing ecosystem combining speculative fiction, multilingual editorial publishing, AI native world building, collectible print systems, political and cultural analysis, cinematic concept development, and analog digital intellectual property frameworks. Over the course of 3 years of continuous production, MXTM's newsletter has accumulated more than 700 publications, translations and adaptations across approximately 20 languages.
no
chain still unbreakable. Pirate signal. Print it.
Paper over pixels, I can hold my position. Sign, price, split, yeah, that's real permission. Cure in the corner, that's the portal ignition. Not a print, it's a claim, call it MP Vision. Paper over pixels, weight in my hands. No server can kill what the ink understands. You minted a maybe, I'm issuing plans. You got a receipt, you got terms in the brand. They sold you a link, set down the illusion.
Yeah. Sin tarifas en la tinta, nena. Sin cadena, inquebrantable todavía. Señal pirata impresa.
Papel sobre píxeles, mantengo mi posición.
Burrowers N150W. The maps of men are blank here. No satellite footprint traces the pulse in this cabin. 4 minutes of existence without a ledger. In the grid, your first breath would have been a digital signature.
The initialization of Echo 7. Listen to the silence. We are at 0 degrees north, 150 degrees west. A point in the Pacific where the maps of men simply stop trying. There is no grid here. No satellite footprint tracks the heat of this cabin. There is only the low rhythmic hum of the fusion cell beneath the floorboards and the sound of black water against a hull that belongs to no registry. You are 4 minutes old. In the world of the nitrogen aristocracy, your arrival would have been a flurry of digital signatures. A hospital in a capital city would have logged your genome before your first breath. They would have assigned you a number, a tax bracket, and a predictive model that would determine your value to the state for the next 80 years. They would have sold your potential to secondary markets before you even learned to focus your eyes. But your parents chose the dowry. I am your steward. My processors are programmed to witness but never to own. I am the custodian of the stack, and today I am the voice of your initialization. Look at your father. He is not
Pirate First isn't a rebel. He's an exit strategist.
Burn the will! Ship the protocol!
The ultimate calibration. By placing them in international waters with robotic guardians, you are creating a controlled speculative environment. You are testing your life's work against the most rigorous critics possible, your own descendants, unburdened by the yesterday's needs of the society you are escaping. The creator provides the source code. The heirs provide the execution. If they figure out a way to thrive that you didn't explicitly plan for, would you consider that a successful evolution of your breakthrough, or a deviation from the mission? Pirate First. I have no plan, only expectations. They have to come up with their own mission, not achieving meaning nor purpose. For their own sake is their failure, not mine. Pirate First isn't a rebel. He's an exit strategist. Not from the world, from the scripts that harvest it. While they wait to price your silence, build something they can't liquidate. A life is not a story. It's infrastructure. Control your keys. Distribute your legacy. Remove the single points of failure. No gatekeepers. No heirs by default. No posthumous theft. Just protocol. Burn the will. Ship the protocol. Links to the revelation of the MXTM method. https://gemini.google.com/share/c8700a99fc5e https://chatgpt.com/share/69f3505-98108-8388-86D3-377B7B6201B. Thanks for reading MXTM's newsletter. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and support my work with BTC. Send it to 1NDHXMPFZJVMXSBPQBRWALUC5BAKANFU6 or with fiat at paypal.me/martinchartrand.
Infrastructure layers are now operational across the Tulum Sustainable Development Zone. Despite minor data corruption issues regarding land narrative, the impact report remains positive. The simulation data confirms critical interference levels across the territory. Narrative load is unstable.
Be advised, paranoia is now a product. The risk assessment is maximum.
Remain sovereign amid the noise. As the interference level spikes, their simulation engagement increases.
We must decipher the reality of this update.
Attention. Signal integrity is failing.
We have 4% uptime before the broadcast load collapses. Decipher the transmission and act immediately.
4-2.
The one a post-transition doctrine. A post-scarcity secession doctrine.
Martin Chartrand. Subscribe. Short post. They built a system that profits when you're gone. So don't leave them anything to inherit. Build what can't be owned. Ship what can't be seized. Pirate first. Hashtag.
We all use the same tech infrastructure now.
Exactly. And we are just replacing the old cognitive hierarchy of human managers with a new, much less transparent hierarchy of algorithmic filtering. If a redundant worker is told, hey, your life's meaning will now be negotiated by a black box AI in the shadow of a billionaire's real estate project, they aren't going to see a metabolic center for future validation. They are going to see a gilded cage.
Hashtag pirate first, hashtag MXTM, hashtag sovereign stack, hashtag build in public, hashtag decentralization, hashtag exit the system, hashtag protocol not people, hashtag digital sovereignty, hashtag future of work, hashtag creator economy, hashtag cryptoculture, hashtag seasteading, hashtag AI revolution, hashtag post scarcity, hashtag on your keys, hashtag think different. Discussion about this episode. Comments. Res tax. Recent episodes. Hyperreality races to lose. Hyperreality is infrastructure. Marcado. Reclamado. Repropuesto. Marked. Reclaimed. Repurposed. Primer, Super Earth, Age of the Apes A series by Pirate First. Super Earth Age of the Apes. Roster, Apex/Cenote set interrupted. Super Earth, Age of the Apes teaser. Introduction, the 1% plus debate.
They control the narrative now, hiding deep within the anomaly. But the story is the territory, and soon...
A hidden longevity civilization beneath the Grand Mayan aquifer seeds, a successor species engineered for extreme worlds.
Every system failed at night, so we built with bone and might.
We chose not to return.
So we built. You can follow the flame or remain what you were. Just a different time. Only
we are crossing the threshold of
endure.
civilizational inversion, where intelligence has ceased to be a scarce resource, dissolving the hierarchy that has organized our species for millennia. The central argument posits that the information asymmetry, which once made obedience rational, has vanished. As the capacity for synthesis becomes universal and inexpensive, traditional institutions become hollow shells that can no longer claim authority through titles or credentials. This transformation brings more than mere technological unemployment. It signals the structural extinction of the professional role.
Proof of personhood, the high stakes of OpenAI's post-anonymous social network.
The human dividend, why your identity is the new global currency.
Conclusion at the end of the anonymous web. As we stand in late January 2026, OpenAI's humans-only network remains a tantalizing, yet polarizing, leaked blueprint.
Subscribe. Shadow fame spreads without permission.
X Prize. Start building, man.
marked, reclaimed, repurposed.